I'm Chad Munger. I'm the founder and CEO of Mammoth Distilling. I owned a software and consulting business in Chicago. Well, I'd sold the business and moved up here to build a summer home on property we bought from a family member who had passed away, and started spending enough time up here that I realized I'd prefer to be living in northern Michigan than in downtown Chicago. And after a year or so of doing that, it became clear that I wanted to be more involved in the community, and my wife and I are both pretty entrepreneurial, so we decided that we would try to find a business that could take advantage of what was happening in the Antrim County area at the time, and maybe start out small and see where it went. Ari Sussman, one of our whiskey makers at Mammoth, discovered the story of Rose and Rye. During his off hours, he has a habit of looking through old magazines for spirits advertisements from the early 1900s. And he discovered an ad about a Seagram's whiskey ad that actually identified South Manitou Island and Rose and Rye as the grain that had gone into this particular whiskey. And that's really unusual. When you see a bottle of whiskey these days, they don't name where the grain came from or what grain it really is. So he called me and said, well, this is really interesting. Turns out this grain that was named on this bottle was actually propagated by Michigan State in the early 1900s. We should do some research. So as we started to dig into it, it became a compelling story, and we're interested in local grains and Michigan things, and realized that this was about as local as it can get and about as interesting as it can get, and that we ought to take a shot at finding some Rose and Rye. But it didn't exist anywhere. It hadn't been grown in 80 years or so. So we found some in a seed bank in a mountain in Utah that the USDA operates, and we took the seed back to Michigan State, and they grew out a small crop for us in their greenhouses, and then we took that to the National Park Service and said, we don't know if you know the story or not, but this particular grain that hasn't been around for almost 100 years used to grow out on South Manitou Island, and it was the grain that supplied lots of the bootleggers during Prohibition on the East Coast. And we've grown a little bit of it, and we want to know if you'd be interested in letting us try to bring it back to its birthplace. And they already knew the story. They had a whole display of it in the visitor center at Sleeping Bear Dunes, and he said, sure, we know all about it. And if Michigan State's on board, we'll let you give it a shot. So from there, it's just taken off. Well, we're mostly younger people. I'm by far the oldest person in the company. Our intention, one of the things that we really wanted to do when we started with Mammoth, was operate in small communities that don't have a lot of opportunity and give people jobs that have career paths and are good jobs. They're not just subsistence jobs. And so we've got jobs in hospitality. We run 6 tasting rooms right now, but we operate this production facility here, which is all run by people under 30. We're expanding in a couple of different ways. We're operating a farm on South Manitou Island. We're looking at a couple more small farms there. So you could come to Mammoth and get a job making whiskey, growing grain, serving drinks, doing social media even. So lots of opportunity. I think people come here for the beauty, right? And to some degree the isolation. I came from the heart of Chicago, so it was a big change of pace for me, but a welcome one, to be able to spend more time outdoors and on the water and in nature. So I think that's one of the big draws, but you really get a sense of community here that you don't necessarily in a large place like Chicago. 7 million people can be a little bit isolating and a little bit lonely in its own way. So it's nice to be in northern Michigan where there's some shared experience here. We tend to recreate with the same people over and over again. So you develop relationships on a different level, I think, than you do in some of the other places that I've lived. So, you come for the beauty and stay for the people. I have a nostalgic connection to it. I mean, I guess that's what it's got us back to the north from where we were. But I'd say opportunity. It's not opportunity the way you think of it in places that have a lot of large employers. You can do a lot here if you work hard and have a little bit of drive. There's opportunities to go create really novel things. A lot of very creative, generous people here that like to share what they know and what they do, and will let you get involved with what they're up to and take it and expand it in new ways. Try as many different things as you can. Do things. Way more important than building what looks good on a resume are meeting people and trying things that you've never tried before. It's always interesting to me to find out how different things end up being related to one another, and experiences that you have in one area of life really pay off and help you grow and advance professionally in unexpected ways. So don't get too locked into thinking you need a career ladder that's very obvious and specific. Try lots of different things, meet lots of different people, do many different things at one time if you can. There's lots of opportunities to volunteer here. There's always somebody looking for a little bit of help on the side. Trying to do two different things at the same time, in my experience, has been the way to really grow and find the next most interesting thing to do with your life. Hey, I'm Chad Munger, and I chose the North.